Welcome to episode 192 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today we're going to be finding out about the beautiful Dolomites in Italy, chatting about the golden days of ski trips by coach, and discussing how the UK market is looking this winter. Now, my name is Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guests today. Both are first-timers on the podcast. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Lou from Inspired Italy. Hi, Lou. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good, thank you.
Should I be saying come stai?
Sì, bene, grazie.
Because you are in Italy at the moment?
I am. I'm right on the Umbria-Tuscany border, heading to the Dolomites next week.
Right. Okay. Exciting. Right. Well, we're going to be talking about the Dolomites a little bit later on. Secondly, though, I'd like to introduce Dan Fox, who's owner of the UK tour operator Ski Weekends. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good morning, Ian. I'm great, thanks. Here I am in not quite so sunny today, St Gervais, which is great because there's a bit of cloud coming in and there's snow in the air. So very promising.
I did not know that you were out in the Alps as well. I thought you were going to tell me you're in the UK somewhere. You're making me feel very, I'm here based in Brighton on a fairly dull autumn day. And you two are both overseas. You are in the Alps at the moment, Dan. Can I ask you, when did you last ski or snowboard?
I last skied, I was trying to work it out, I think it's the 24th of April. We had our end of season bash for the staff. The UK team come over to Verbier and we stay in the chalets. They all have a good ski round and they went home and we didn't. We strapped on our touring skis and did a couple of days ski touring, which was blissful because, of course, the piste was shut. So we had the mountain to ourselves. We had great snow. Yeah, it's soft in the afternoon, but lovely bit of ski touring in the mornings and enjoyed some sunshine.
Nice. And what about yourself then, Lou? Was that at the end of the season in the Dolomites?
Pretty much. Our season's not as long, obviously, as where Dan is. So I last skied 30th of March, and it was actually a ski test day. We were testing skis for this coming season, and we went with the head shape EV8s, I think they are, and that's what we're going to be using both as ski leaders and our clients this season.
Okay, well, those test days are really important and trying new kit. I now have, thinking about, when you last skied and snowboarded, regular listeners will know I was out in Zermatt for just a day of skiing back in August. But I now have, as of recording today on the 23rd of November, 24 days to go till I'll be skiing in Les Arcs if all goes well on the 17th of December. So I'm getting excited about that. Dan referred to the snow situation. It's quite cold in the Alps. There's snow coming in. We've been through, a couple of cycles since our last podcast. A lot of snow came down, particularly higher up. It got a bit warm and there's been quite a lot of rain in different places in the Alps. But I do have a few snow reports just to drop in from some of our regular contributors just now. We've got Alex in Courchevel, Betony, who went to Verbier, and possibly, depending how things go, Dave will be reporting from Glacier 3000 and waiting for his report to come in yet. So I might edit that out if he doesn't come up with it.
Hi Ian, Alex from 150 Days of Winter reporting from Val Thorens for their pre-opening on the 18th of November. As is fairly normal, Val Thorens is one of the first ski resorts to open in France. In this case, they opened a week earlier than normal. Despite only a handful of lifts and a couple of pistes open, the snow coverage was good. Weather wasn't the best, with snow showers at the top of Pechley and drizzle at the lower lifts. Throw in questionable visibility and flat light, and you might think that skiing was a nightmare. However, it turned into an epic day and a good start to the 2024 winter season. Using ski maths, as I'd already purchased in my early bird Three Valleys season pass, it was in essence a great 3 days skiing. Thanks to some torrential rain in the region, more snow is needed everywhere and thankfully is forecast next week. And on that, I'm counting down to the 2nd of December and the opening of Courchevel and Maribel.
Hi Iain, it's Betony phoning in with the snow report. Now, I'm based in France, in the Mont Blanc Valley, not too far from Chamonix and St Gervais. But last weekend, I went skiing in Verbier in Switzerland, which is actually included in our lift pass, which is great news. Now, after a huge dump of snow where we saw videos and photos of everyone skiing epic powder, we had a lot of rain, really quite high up to just under 3,000. So I was nervous that all the snow would have been washed away, but as it turns out, it hadn't. And I had a great day skiing in Verbier. They've got a couple of runs open. One of them was a really long run down to what is called the James Blunt Chair, I believe. And there was good coverage on the piste, a little bit still off the piste, but, not epic powder. But it gives a good base. And I think the high resorts like Verbier and Teen are going to be skiing well for the next few weeks before the start of the real winter, when, fingers crossed, we'll have some big dumps of snow. The forecast is looking a lot colder the next few days, and I believe there's going to be a little bit of snow on Saturday. So it's feeling like winter. So everyone get their snow dance shoes on, do a little snow dance, and then fingers crossed for an epic winter. Thanks, Iain. Bye.
Hi Iain, it's Dave Burrows from SnowPros Ski School, your friendly English-speaking ski school based in the Port de Soleil and Villars. That noise you can hear in the background is the turning of the chairlift at Glacier 3000. I'm up here today. It is beautiful blue sky, but there is loads of wind. So we've got this kind of local wind that we have. It's called the Bees. And the Bees just generates like loads and loads of high wind. Blows all the clouds away, which is pretty cool because it's been pretty gloomy. But it's a bit windy up here. So conditions are good. Snow is excellent here on the glacier. Last weekend I was in Verbier, and Verbier is now open on weekends all the way down to Ruinet. I was a bit surprised about that because it's quite early in the season for them to do it, but conditions there were excellent also. So we've got a couple of really good local options. And here then in, in our region, Verona is open. They've got one piste open, I think. And then you go further up the valley towards like Sasfay and Zermatt, and obviously those guys are open as they are most of the year. So all good. Resorts opening up. Lots going on. People skiing. It's very busy up here today. And it's cool. There's like loads of ski teams and schools and various other bits and pieces. And me doing loads of I'm just doing a few drills, just trying to get my balance back after the summer. And it doesn't hurt to do a few low speed turns here and there just to get yourself going. So all good. I'm surprised you even talk to us anymore now that you're speaking to mega stars like Bodie Miller and stuff like that. But keep up the great work with what you're doing in the podcast. I hope you and all of the ski podcast listeners have had an amazing summer. And hopefully I'll speak to you soon with more snow updates. See you soon. Bye.
Right, while we're dropping those snow reports in, Dan mentioned to me something else to make me jealous again. Just tell us where you're going next weekend.
Well, on Sunday, we're planning on going across to Verbier to get our first turns of the season in. We were talking to Warren Smith this morning. He said there were 2 or 3 powder days already. Like the rest of the Alps, it's been affected by the warmer temperatures and a bit of rain, but it's snowing again. There's snow due on Friday and Saturday over there. So I think we're going to go and make some tracks on Sunday.
Cool. Well, that's very exciting. We had Robin reporting from Verbier before the list had even opened. He was ski touring, and regular listeners will know Warren Smith. I've got a special episode interview with him. Also skied with him in Verbier back in March. So that's good. This seems like a good point to remind you, listener, that you can save money this winter when you book your ski hire at intersportrent.com and use the code SKIPODCAST. You get a guaranteed discount for all ski hire in France, Austria and Switzerland. And in fact, one of our listeners told me he managed to get a discount in Andorra as well, which I didn't even know you could do. And you can make it even simpler. You don't need to use that code. You can actually just take a link in the show notes and your basket will be automatically reduced. And I wanted to thank all of our listeners to date who have actually used that code, because it really does help us. So if you want to support the podcast, book your ski hire with Intersport and use the code SKIPODCAST at checkout, or take the link in the show notes. Now, 2 little bits of news. From a World Cup racing point of view, I guess the highlight is that Dave Ryding just came 4th in the slalom in Gurgl, Obergurgl, where most people would know it. He was 100th of a second off the podium. That is as close as you can get to being on the podium or sharing it with someone else. So, brilliant work, Dave. Hopefully he'll be on the podium again. Also, World Cup-wise, Zermatt and Cervinia have just had unbelievably bad luck. You might recall, listeners, I did a special episode about the speed opening downhill events that were taking place over there. They would have been the first ever cross-border World Cup races. It's a downhill race that was starting on the Zermatt side of the Glacier, finishing in Cervinia. Last year, they were cancelled because there wasn't enough snow. This year, there was plenty of snow, but high winds over 2 weekends meant that all 4 downhills were cancelled. So that really is unbelievably bad luck, and it will remain to see what happens. Whether the FIS will continue to schedule those for the future. Another bit of news, if you listened to episode 190, you would have heard Kendra from Sunshine Village. She actually got back in contact with me after that podcast and said that for listeners of the podcast, she can offer a special rate on a ski and stay package at their hotel. I think it's 20% off the best rate. I'm going to put a link into the show notes about that. Right, let's move on from Canada to Italy. Lou, I was very excited to have you on the show. I am lucky enough to have been to lots of different ski resorts. I don't exactly know how many there've been, but it might be in the hundreds. But I have to embarrassingly admit that I have never been to the Dolomites, and I feel like I've really missed out. Dan's got a shock of horror on his face.
I have to say, absolutely stunning.
It's regarded as one of the most beautiful, areas in the world. Lou, do you want to just maybe, for the listeners' benefit, give us an idea of geographically, how it fits in, and whether even the Dolomites are part of the Alps?
Yeah, they're not really part of the Alps. So they're the northeast part of Italy. So if you imagine the traditional boot, the Italian boot, we're on the top right, butted up against Austria, and it really is the most beautiful, stunning landscape. It's hard to believe it, and it's hard to explain it, but it is just breathtaking. It's lots of wows when you get to the top of a lift and you go wow, and then you get to the top of another lift and you're at the top of the Marmolada and you can see everything and you go wow. It really is. You have to come, Iain, definitely. Come on a safari.
It is on my list. I think possibly one of the limiters I did look into it this year is I generally prefer to travel by train. Typically, where would you fly into? Because there's a lot of different access points, aren't there, into the Dolomites?
Yeah, it's really easy to get to. So we use Innsbruck and Verona for our safaris, but most of our intercontinental clients, they come to Munich, Venice, Milan, and those are really well connected by train. I mean, you can come to the Dolomites by train. We do get people coming on the train. You can even come on a Flixbus if you want via Amsterdam. So it's really easy to get to. I absolutely promise you, and by train.
I do have some friends who went out to one of the Dolomites resorts. It might have been in Tyrol. Is that still in the Dolomites, Tyrol?
Absolutely. North Italy, Tyrol. That's where we are.
Yeah, and they flew in and out of Venice and, added on kind of like, let's say, a city break there as well. A lot of those, how long is your transfer from places like Verona and Venice?
So Verona, it's 2 hours, and Venice, what we would always suggest to people, Venice is 4 hours, but we would always suggest to people, come on the train, get the train to Bolzano, and then that's just 30 minutes. And we have these fabulous trains, I'm sure you know this, the Frecciarossa high-speed trains. Such good value, really fantastic value trains in Europe.
Yeah, well, if anyone watched Race Across the World, they'll know that those Italian trains are great value for money. But thinking about the Dolomiti Superski, which is the name of the area. If people think of the three valleys, as being the whole of the region there, the Dolomiti Superski is a super large area that covers a lot of different resorts.
Yeah, and absolutely, the Dolomites isn't a resort; it's a big area. So it's. If you think it's twice the size of New York, it's 350,000 acres. So 1,200 kilometres is always the figure that you see. So that's 1,200 kilometres of connected skiing, 750 miles, 29 miles across. It is huge. It is a huge area, all on one ski pass. Dolomiti Superski, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point of a debate, isn't it? Because 1,200 kilometres. Now, I know so that's all on the same ski pass, because the Three Valleys is, billed as being the largest ski area in the world. And I think from memory, we talk about 600 kilometres of piece there. But I guess they're all interconnected. If you wanted to ski all of Dolomiti Superski, you'd have to kind of get buses between different resorts. Is that how that would work?
For one or two, absolutely, or a horse tow on, as you might have heard. We've got a horse tow in the Dolomites, but it's it's connected valleys. So one valley will be connected to another valley. So Alpe di Susi, Val Gardena is connected to the Alta Badia. Alta Badia is connected to Araba. So that's how it works. But I honestly don't know why we can't claim to be the biggest ski area in the world, but it can only be that very occasionally you have to take a bus ride of 20 minutes or something. That can be the only reason.
So when people talk about the Sella Ronda, what is the Sella Ronda in the context of the Dolomites then?
Yeah, it's its most famous thing, the Sella Ronda. So the Sella Massif is just a big rock right in the centre. I mean, a huge rock right in the centre of the Dolomites, and the Sella Ronda goes around it, left or right, anti-clockwise or clockwise, and it's something that everybody sort of wants to do, and it's definitely worth doing. So we think of the Sella Ronda as the circle line on the London Tube. Right. So we use it like that, and the Sella Ronda can get a little busy. Most of the Dolomites is not busy. There's only two sort of places that get busy, and that's the Sella Ronda, because people have heard about it. It's really well signposted, fantastically, both left and right. And occasionally the Marmolada gets a little busy, but most of the time it's just not busy in the Dolomites. Definitely do the Sella Ronda. Avoid it on a Thursday or Friday because that gets a little busy. People sort of build up to doing it, and actually you don't need to, but it's the way people think when they come on a week's ski holiday.
And how long would that? I know you don't want to kind of like completely focus on the Sella Ronda as a thing to do, but it's something you can do in a day, right?
Oh, absolutely. You could do it twice in a day. So depending which way you go around, you could do it in 3 hours and up to 6 hours. We say to people, allow yourself a day to do it so you can stop for lunch and photographs and stuff. Remind
me what resorts you'd be passing through then if you did that.
So you're going to be going through Corvara, the Val Gardena, Araba, Alta Badia. So you're doing the main sort of four big hitters, if you like. So it's 4 valleys, 4 passes you're doing for the Sella Ronda.
Yeah, and those are the most famous resorts. Did you say Cortina in that list? I don't think so.
No, not on the Sella Ronda.
But the Cortina is in Dolomites as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Depending who you talk to, they call that the Queen of the Dolomites, or we call the Marmolada the Queen of the Dolomites. But absolutely, and Cortina is a beautiful, beautiful place to ski.
It's also going to be coming into focus because the next Winter Olympics, when we come around to that, 2026, is going to be Milan-Cortina, isn't it?
It is indeed. And they're getting ready, and we've got new infrastructure going in Cortina. They're really improving accommodation in the village. No, it's looking really good. And there's such great skiing. It has some of the more technical skiing, I think, Cortina, in the Dolomites.
Okay. Do you happen to know where the different events are going to be taking place then? Because they always have like some. Let's say, for example, the women's alpine in one place and the men's alpine in another place.
I don't know all of the details yet. I think they're going to use certainly both sides of Cortina, both the Faloria side, the north side, as well as the Tofana side, for some of the downhills. And then you're going to be going to Milan and I think Trento for some of the other things, the bobsleigh. Although we've still got our James Bond bobsleigh in Cortina. It's looking a little sad now. But definitely both sides of Cortina.
Yeah, and I think another thing that the Dolomiti Superski, the big area, likes to kind of promote and sell itself on is it's got really good snowmaking over there. Is that right?
Absolutely, best in Europe apparently. And we call it programmed snow. They call it programmed snow. So you've got some extraordinary figure like 6,000 snow cannons, and 97% of the Dolomites is covered by snow cannons. So it used to have, I'm sure you know this, a sort of reputation as not being snow sure. And we actually get our snow from the south. Our weather comes from the south. So that's why there was this big investment. So I just had a quick check on the on the web cams this morning, and there was certainly a lot of snow cannons going when I had a look. So that at this time of year, regardless of what's happening with real snow, and we're getting a good bit of snow. And Saturday, we're going to get a good dump of snow there too. But they're still making snow. The other thing to know about the Dolomites is they groom every single one of the 1,200 kilometres every single night, and that helps keep the snow. So last year, when a lot of the Alps weren't having great conditions, we had great conditions.
Yeah, it's interesting how the different resorts, they all have, the Dolomiti Superski might not be saying, oh, we're the biggest ski area in the world, but they certainly are saying, oh, we've got the best snow coverage. And I didn't know that before about grooming all the slopes. And, what we're talking about here is skiing on piste. I guess I mentioned the Olympics, coming up over in Milan-Cortina. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is that they're going to be introducing ski mountaineering for the first time, which I think, the host nation can always pick a new sport. And I think the Italians are probably pretty good at ski mountaineering, which is why they've picked it.
We're a totally on-piste experience. So we are riding the lifts and using the piste. We're not off-piste at all. So the ski mountaineering, there's lots of good opportunities for that in the Dolomites, but actually off-piste stuff, we don't get that much snow. So if you are a true backcountry skier, I don't think the Dolomites is really the place for you. It's definitely an on-piste adventure. Our ski safari started because Tim Hudson met a friend of his for a drink when I think we were doing our second season in the Dolomites, and he went for a drink with Ricardo, and Ricardo is married to a local girl. He actually met her in the ski pass office. And he was telling Tim that he'd just come back from this amazing trip. This is about 15 years ago. And his father-in-law had said to him, oh, Ricardo, come on, pack a backpack. We're going off for a few days. I'm going to introduce you to some of my friends. And they literally packed a couple of backpacks and set off. And they stayed in the mountain refuges, the refuges. So he went all over places he'd never been, even though he was living in the Dolomites. We talked about it when Tim came back, and we just thought, that sounds such fun. And we did it with a group of friends, 5 of us. One of those friends is actually still ski leading for us all these years later. And we started doing that with friends and friends of friends, and then it just developed into a business. It wasn't really a thing when we started, a ski safari, if you like.
You're staying in refuges overnight, but everything's on piste. Surely some of those refuges must need getting to.
Yeah, but you get to them by lift. There's one refuge that we actually get to by snowcat or skidoo, depending on how much snow, or even helicopter on 1 or 2 occasions. But yeah, everything we're riding to by lift or we're skiing to, and they're on the top of the mountains. It's quite a thing. It's a wonderful thing. I'm
guessing the refuges are kind of similar to the that which I've experienced in France and Switzerland. It's a kind of more of a dorm type of environment rather than luxurious, let's say.
Not anymore. When we first started, you're right, it was all hairy blankets and bowls of pasta, and now it's ensuite rooms and power showers. So it's changed enormously, even in 12, 15 years. It's a massive change.
Right, that is completely different. I mean, there are a couple of places, that I've been to in the Alps. I guess it depends kind of what altitude you're at and who they're catering for. But ensuite rooms in a refuge sounds quite rare to me. And what happens if someone's going on one of your, ski safaris? What happens to their luggage? But do they have to haul that as well in your back?
Yeah, so we absolutely are. We're self-supporting, if you like. So we provide everybody with a backpack, a Vaudi 22-litre backpack. You don't need it. You don't need much with you. You don't even need a pair of shoes, because once you're there, there's nowhere to go. You just need a pair of decent rubber slippers, and that's it. So you don't need very little. I absolutely promise you. The refugees have fabulous beds, or toiletries, towels, all of those things that you might be a little bit worried about. And I used to be one of those people who took two ski jackets and 2 pairs of skis on a ski holiday. And now I'm totally the opposite. I take as little as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we've had these conversations previously when we talked about, doing the Haute Route and ski touring, about how little you can get away with when you're going skiing. So that can obviously affect, how much you're taking with you. I noticed as well that you mentioned the Ikon pass on the website. Are you finding more people coming from the States because you can get that free skiing in the Dolomites area?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've probably about equal with Brits this year, our Americans, and it absolutely is to do with the Ikon pass. It's a fantastic thing. You know, it's a turnkey thing, if you like. So you just rock up to the lift with your Ikon pass, and the readers accept it. You don't need to swap it for anything. And the full Ikon pass gives you 7 days in the Dolomites. So that is brilliant as far as I can see.
Yeah, it's so interesting, these passes. Well, Lou, that is great. You've whetted my appetite for the Dolomites even more than it was already. And, you know, I know I keep saying this on the podcast, but, you know, my bucket list just gets bigger and bigger. I will work out how to get there or when I'm going to get there at some point. But that's brilliant. Thanks very much. If it's all right with you, I'm going to turn to Dan now. You know, Dan, we were chatting at Listex, which I mentioned before, the trade event held in London. I think it was last month now. And one of the things we talked about sustainability, and we talked about coach travel, which not many people kind of take these days. I think there's maybe one company offering it, but Ski Weekends that you own, that actually started as a coach specialist business, I think. Is that right? How did you get involved with it?
Oh, crikey, there's two stories in there. Harris Holidays was a coach operator doing classic holidays out of the UK, around the UK, frankly, all what you expect of coach holidays back in the 80s. And Frank and his brother in the 80s, 1986 was their first ski trip. And Frank basically went, I've got an empty coach. I've got 18 mates. I want to go to the Alps. And let's see if we can sell some empty seats. And it went rather well. It went so well that 2 years later, we bought a hotel in Bride-le-Bain at the bottom of the Trois Vallées. And that business trundled along in quite a very classic old world ski industry way, where the coach drivers turned up and went to help in the kitchen. And you might find them serving in the bar in the evenings, which, of course, these days, you just no way would any of that happen. But they ran really successfully for years and years, doing weeks and weekends. In fact, when my ski industry life started in 1989, so 3 years later, I went overseas to do one season and then went home in 2003. So quite a long time. And ended up taking over Ski Weekends in 2007. At which point in time, it just started to dabble in the flight market. But the coach program was about 2,500 passengers a year. It evolved quite a lot. You know, the coaches were much more modern. And they weren't what you think of for those days of those frightful school or university trips. I could bore you for half an hour on how exciting a triaxle 14.2 meter coach is, but I won't.
I mean, I did go out by coach a few times back in the 80s, university time, and also other trips as well. Not with Harris Holidays, that I recall. So, but how did the latter version, the kind of 21st century coaches, differ then?
Well, the biggest difference from a passenger point of view was that the seats reclined to 120 degrees, which is as far back as you need to go. And if you were 6'2", 6'3", your knees and feet didn't touch the seat in front. Yeah, that's kind of all you need to know. It was an overnight trip through France, offering weeks and 3-day short breaks. It's about an 11-hour journey through France, so it worked pretty efficiently. And of course, at the time, we were touting the fact that the coach is something like 15 to 20 times greener than flying. But the real reason, truthfully, most people were taking coach was it was typically £100, £150 cheaper per person than flying, because we didn't charge for the bags. Your bags went on the coach. You got on the coach. And the other thing that people really loved about it is it went from the London Victoria coach station to a hotel, 2 pickups in UK, and that was it. No messing around with airports, no waiting for flights, no parking your car, none of the stress associated with all of that. You turned to a Victoria coach station, you got on the coach, and you got off at your hotel. When I took over, we grew it, and we actually added in Chamonix and Morzine, and we topped out at pushing towards 5,000 guests a year going by coach. But I guess rather sadly, if I'm honest, because I kind of lament our coach days, the price on flights got lower and lower, and the price of coach, because the drivers now had to have 2 or 3 drivers depending on the route, the fuel, the tolls got higher and higher. So that differentiation in price got eroded to the point where for an early booking, it was cheaper to fly. And for a late booking, you might be saving £50. So the price incentive wasn't there. We did reach a point, 2016 we stopped coach, and we were doing about 1,200 passengers then. But the truth was, it just wasn't economically viable. It was just to the point where it was simply breaking even and getting worse.
So you still had 1,200 people going out, each winter in 2016. I have a feeling there's probably like a real core of skiers who that is the way that they want to travel. If you put on a coach now, you probably book it up and sell it straight away, right?
Ian, we still have a core of people that contact us every year who are our diehard coach customers who still haven't got the message that we're not doing coach this year. The truth is, however, that most of those passengers want to pay the bargain prices that aren't really viable anymore. But, and really importantly, I do think there is a place for coach, and every year now I look very seriously at reintroducing coach. The truth is the cost of the coach running at a decent capacity makes it comparable with flight now. By the time you put your bags on an aircraft, it's not that cheap. I do really think and would really like to reintroduce coach back into ski. And I think it'll come in the next couple of years.
Right. Okay. That's interesting to hear. But you said before that Ski Weekends or Harris Holidays were offering ski weekends by coach. That's a lot of travelling time for 2 or 3 days skiing, right?
Are you ready for this explanation? 5 o'clock London Victoria Thursday night. Get into resort 8-9 o'clock Friday morning. Ski Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Get on the coach Sunday night. Get back to London Victoria 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Go straight to the office. 1 day off work, 3 days skiing. And that's what a large percentage of our people did.
When you explain it like that, it sounds great. I guess if you're the sort of person who can sleep on a coach, I think that's probably the clincher, isn't it? If you can sleep on a coach and you can deal with that, then that can work. From my recollection of my university days, mainly we slept because we drunk too much prior to that.
Ian, Dan's waving his arms violently. It's nothing like those. I'm going to be a little bit of a geek. Basically, those coaches would take 69 people. A coach now that is over 1.5 meters longer, we would put max 53 in. The leg room is totally different. We used to promote the Thursday night out as a social night with your friends, watch a couple of movies, bring a bottle of wine and a couple of beers. We didn't encourage excess drinking on the coach for very obvious reasons. But basically, enough to anaesthetise you, pass out, do the journey on the way there. And on the way home, after 3 hard days skiing, we'd put a movie on at 6 o'clock, and I'd almost guarantee you by 7 o'clock, the whole coach would be asleep.
In fact, when you say that, it reminds me of the old snow train where people, prior to Eurostar, and people used to do the same sort of thing as you would be traveling by coach. You'd come over to Calais, via the ferry and then get the train from there. And I think on the ferry, you could stock up on really cheap beer. So people would get these slabs of beer and presumably stick them underneath the coach, or in the case of the train, I'd pick up these people from Moutier, on a Saturday morning, and they'd be bladdered already, and we were picking them up at like 6 or 7 in the morning or something. And then they get their luggage out, which included all of this beer they're going to take up to the mountain. Yes, giving me shivers thinking about it now. Okay, well, things have changed, a lot now. Ski weekends, you said, you stopped doing the coach back in 2016. Maybe it will come back. But, you're offering a lot of different holidays now. And I thought it'd be quite interesting to kind of get an insight into any trends that you've seen and what people are looking for, for this winter, or how things have changed a little bit.
I think I've got to start by saying Ski Weekends, the name, is our greatest asset and our greatest folly. People automatically assume, strangely enough, that we only do ski weekends. Right. The truth is we just do flexible stays. About half our business includes a Saturday night, and they're typically stays of 3 or 4 nights. But the rest of the business are flexible stays. And what we are seeing, we see a lot more people taking midweek breaks because of flexible working. They can do Monday to Friday or Monday to Thursday, which suits them much better, cheaper flights, quieter routes, less traffic on the roads. It's a cheaper break. And also, with our weeks and 9-10 day slots, people avoid the weekends where the flights are so much more expensive. So Ski Weekends does a lot more than weekends. And in terms of trends, I guess probably the biggest shift is the length of the stays is growing. what we don't do, we're allergic to Saturdays. We don't do Saturday. We do over 40 resorts. I think there's nearly 48 resorts now around 7 European countries. It is majority by flight. We do discounts for self-drive and trains where we include transfers, because we have 10 chalets we run in France, but they represent less than half the program.
And what about destinations? Are you seeing people a shift in destinations that people are looking for? Have you seen that, this winter or even over the last few winters?
I think it's quite interesting, given, we all acknowledge that last winter was not the best snow winter we've seen for a long time. It perhaps wasn't the disaster the press said it was, but it wasn't great. There is a tendency for people to want to go high, but what we're increasingly seeing is people actually moving away from some of the big super areas, Trois-Vallées, Espace de Quilles, and actually wanting to discover. Now, I think some of that's a product of the aging ski market, where actually the miles are less important than the experience and the culture. And Lou's comments about the Sella Ronda, I completely get it. Beautiful place, great food, wonderful cultural trip to do. We're seeing a growth in places like Léger, which is actually France's fourth largest ski area, 400 kilometers, is the Evasion ski area, which is why we moved here for the winter. There are no tour operators that come here apart from us and Peak Retreats that do apartments. And it's a lovely, lovely cultural area with people who are local. So you get a proper local experience. The lift system is surprisingly modern, in fact, better than certain super areas I could mention. And it's a great ski area. So people are looking for more. The other side of that is I've got real interest in Norway. People going into Bergen, doing a night in Bergen, experience the city, which is fab. It rains a bit, but apart from that, it's great. And then getting an amazing train journey through to Voss or Mykdalen. Great ski areas, great cultural experience, so much else to do on whether you go for 3 days or a week or longer. There's so many different opportunities there to go and discover.
You mentioned St Gervais. Are you in St Gervais-les-Bains? The side of the village that's a little bit higher up, because if when I come by train, you come into Le Fayet and then you got Les Bains a bit further up. Les Bains is where you get the ski lifts from.
That's absolutely right. But to tell you what's interesting, I don't know if you know, but for actually in progress at the moment is the construction of the new lift that's coming from La Fayet direct. So you'll be able to get the TGV from Paris to La Fayet, get on a gondola and come straight into the centre of St Gervais. If you stayed on the Ronda, it would take you up to Betex with in English, which is really the bottom ski area.
And just clarify, because I have skied, over in that way, and I know a few people who live in the town. There's quite a big British kind of population in St Gervais, right? People who've moved that have been priced out of Chamonix, perhaps.
And it's a much smaller town. It's much more cultural, I guess. St Gervais is not cheap. I would say people come here because they want something a little bit more authentic and cultural. I love Chamonix. I lived there for 7 years. But it's an international melting pot that is relentlessly busy. It's not a cute place to live.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I obviously a massive fan of Chamonix, but I haven't lived there, one summer. But, so advantages of that. What about, I wanted to ask you another question. You mentioned that I think you said that you run a few chalets as well, but, evidently you're still in that chalet market. There are way fewer chalets than there used to be, post-Brexit and the legal aspect side of things. Is that you believing a bit like the coach travel, there's a certain type of person who's always going to book a chalet holiday?
Okay, I mean, the stats are quite simple. Pre-Brexit, pre-COVID, over 50% of the British skiers that went with the tour operator stayed in a chalet. Now, it's half that. And a lot of that, you're completely correct, is because of the impact of Brexit. And then COVID was kind of the double blow of that, because of all the commitment, the financial commitment in the chalets and what happened to the season. It was a very difficult pill to swallow for many. For us, we've always paid properly through the French system for a long time. So the financial change was actually relatively small. The chalet market still has a place, and it works incredibly well for flexible stays, because it takes away, if you're in an apartment, you've got to shop, you've got to think about it, you've got to try and make it work. And yet you get the social side of staying with a whole different group of people. And whilst we do sell chalets as sole occupancy, we sell the majority of them by the room. In fact, our new chalet in Leger will sleep up to 38 people. So it's an hour from the airport, incredibly social. We've even got a couple of solo weekends in there where we're trying to get people to pair up.
Would you call that a club hotel, 38 people, or a chalet hotel? It's larger than your typical chalet, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have another one that's 26 beds, but it's a really good question. And we were very, very tempted to call it a club hotel or a club chalet. And we had a lot of head scratching about whether the market would perceive it. And you'll get this comment. We looked at the SEO and there was no merit in it. So we stuck with chalet.
That's really interesting, Dan. Thanks so much for that. Now, actually, I've got something to drop in, another recording to drop into the podcast just now, because at the Birmingham ski show back in October, I bumped into Eddie the Eagle Edwards, and I had a little chat with him. And I should say at this point that there is an episode, listener, you can listen to a much longer interview with Eddie, which is one of the most enjoyable interviews I've done. But I actually interviewed him while he was on a holiday organised by you guys, and he was at the show on your stand. Is he going to be doing stuff with you again this winter?
Well, Eddie's been skiing with us, or specifically with our guests, for about, I think it's 9 years. And has been involved with all sorts of different charity things we've done. In total, we raised close on £60,000 for children in need by being part of Carfest as well, which Eddie attended, and we strapped him to the top of a van and sent him around the racetrack. But Eddie's a superstar. He was going to be skiing with us this year. He normally stays for sort of 10 days, skis with 3 different groups of guests. But this year, you may or may not be aware, but he is dancing on ice, which he's very excited about, because truthfully, I know Eddie's been hankering after doing it for quite a while. And he's on the show. Obviously, he has no idea whether he's going to be on the final in March. I think that's early March, or whether he'll last that long. I'm voting for him winning.
Right. Okay. I mean, that is interesting because, Chemi Alcott, who's been on the show a bunch of times, did very well on Dancing on Ice. Graham Bell was on it as well. I interviewed him about that. Because it's live, it's not like one of these things that's been filmed like, Who Dares Wins, where they filmed it ages ago and they have to kind of keep it under wraps. It goes from week to week. So, I guess that mucks up his winter. He doesn't know how long he's going to be on it and when he's going to be available again.
So what he has said is this, he said, as soon as he knows, we'll get a date in the diary, and if not, it'll be next year.
Okay, well, that's brilliant, Dan. Let's have a little listen to what Eddie had to say when I met him at the Birmingham show. Right, very excited. I'm here with Eddie the Eagle Edwards at the Birmingham show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a beautiful day out there. It's lovely and cold. It's ready to snow.
That's right. The cold side of things is good because hopefully he'll get through the door. Now, you're about to be on stage with Chemi. She's going to be interviewing you. But we were just swapping notes. 24 years ago, I think it was, when that script for the Eddie the Eagle movie, was first put in place. Yeah?
That's right. I signed the deal 24 years ago. I sat down with the script writers for a whole week, went through my life story in very fine detail, and they came up with a script, and then about 15 years later they finally made it. So
and then eventually it only got in. When did it get to the screens?
2016, 7 years ago.
And during the making of it, I think did Taron Egerton sit down with you? And
well, I went to meet him before they started filming because he wanted to get an idea of my accent and mannerisms and things, and then I met Hugh Jackman as well and met them on set and watched them film a couple of the scenes, and then I just let them get on with it, and they did a wonderful job. I've seen the film 158 times.
You're joking?
No.
Right. Okay, I think I've seen a few films a lot of times, but that is good. So, well, every scene of it, and even the bit where you're encouraged to think about Bo Derek when you're jumping.
Oh yes, I always get encouraged to think about those kind of images when I'm ski jumping. It helps to relax the mind.
Cool. Well, look forward to listening to your interview with Chemi a little bit later. Thanks a lot, Eddie. Cheers. Oh, I always enjoy chatting with Eddie. He's a really very entertaining guy, and his sessions at those shows were completely full for all of them. Now, feedback time. I enjoy all feedback about the show. I'd like to know what you think, especially about our different features. So please contact me on social at Ski Podcast or by email theskipodcast@gmail.com. I want to thank everybody who's contacted me about why Canadian airports start with a Y. This is part of the conversation I had with Kendra in episode 190. There were several responses, Michael Greenland, and in particular I want to say thanks to Joe Childs. But the overall conclusion was, for those of you who are interested, is that when Canadian railroads and telegraph lines were first built, each station was assigned a 2-letter Morse code. So YC was Calgary, VR was Vancouver, etc. And then when Canada started assigning 3-letter codes to airports, they put a Y in front to create that airport code. Or alternatively, it could be that the Y stands for yes, meaning that airport had a radio station. Anyway, I'm going to put a link into the show notes so you can find out more about that if you want to. We've also had some other feedback. Bob in CH on Snowhead said the Bodie interview, which was number 189, was great. Super interesting guy. Liv said on Facebook, I've been listening to your amazing podcast, especially love the episode with the ski companies talking about sustainability. I'll put a link into the show notes about that one. Ruth very kindly bought me a coffee. Thank you for all the great content. It's been keeping me sane on many long drives recently. I appreciate all the work that goes into the episodes. And Michael also bought me a coffee. Absolutely loving your podcast. Your guest reviews and stories are fantastic. Make for a really interesting and informative listen. And finally, Joe Childs, who is telling me about the airports in Canada, said, thanks for all the info you share on the ski podcast. I'm still working my way through the earlier recordings and finding great stuff. And we have still loads more feedback to cover. I'm going to include some more in episode 193. So if you do like the podcast, there's 3 things you can do to help. Just give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That actually genuinely helps other listeners find us. You can subscribe. So if you're listening now and you haven't subscribed, just subscribe. And then that way, every episode will land into your inbox. And or you can book your ski hire with Intersport Rent using the code Ski Podcast or take the link in the show notes. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank Intersport for sponsoring the show and thank my guest today. Lou, thanks very much.
You're very welcome. And you're very welcome on a ski safari. We've got 10 places left. Come and join us.
Right, 10 places left. Get in there quick. And Dan, thank you very much as well.
Great to chat.
Thank you to both of you. And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.